Mike Flynn betrayed his country. It is unforgivable. But the greater crime was what, to me, in my view, was treason.
What Flynn did in supporting a candidate who the Russians were helping through this operation, so egregious.
He was essentially acting as an unregistered foreign agent.
It's funny because it's treason.
Oh, it's treason. That's a pretty heavy charge. It's a death penalty offense, actually. Did Mike Flynn commit treason? We know the answer with some precision, it turns out, because the details are publicly available. Here's what Flynn did. He gave an untrue statement to the FBI about an entirely legal phone call he'd had with the Russian ambassador to the U.S., Sergei Kislyak. And that's it. Mike Flynn did not collude with our enemies. He did not leak national security secrets. He didn't even lie under oath. He simply claimed not to remember talking about a certain subject, and the FBI didn't believe him. The government threatened to prosecute Flynn's son, so he fled guilty. That's what happened. Oh, but say the news anchors, Flynn lied. He's a liar. Unlike us, we never lie. We're good people. But Mike Flynn is not a good person. He's a liar and a criminal. That's what they're telling you. And it's partly true. Flynn did give inaccurate statements to FBI agents. He's admitted that. Even though he wasn't under oath, that is a crime. Okay. But what's interesting about all of this is that the FBI also lied to Mike Flynn. And yet somehow that's not a crime. So to restate, and you should definitely remember this, get a pen, it is okay for the government to lie to you. They do it all the time, constantly, in fact. But if the government ever catches you in a factual contradiction, you are shafted. They can send you to prison, bankrupt you, threaten your children. That's the system that we have. America's news anchors think it's great. The system has served them well. They're on the government side on this one. In fact, on most matters, whatever the ruling class is for, they're fully on board. Here, for example, is behavior that the news anchors consider totally fine. That would be in stark contrast to Mike Flynn's dastardly lying. So here's what we know. We know that notes taken by Andy McCabe, he was then the deputy director of the FBI, show that the Bureau deliberately planned to trick Flynn and take advantage of his friendliness and his stated desire to help their investigation. We know this because Andy McCabe took notes. And in his notes, he explained that he told Mike Flynn he wanted to interview him, quote, as quickly, quietly, and discreetly as possible. McCabe suggested that having a lawyer, one of those pesky attorneys present, would be unnecessary and time-consuming, a hassle. Don't worry about it, man. Well, Flynn, and a close associate who we talked to this afternoon describes him as trusting by nature, agreed to those terms. Obviously a mistake. He clearly thought he was helping the FBI, but he wasn't. He was walking into a trap. One of the agents he met was Peter Strzok. Remember the name? He's a political activist who famously promised his mistress he'd help to stop Trump. Whatever that means. Well, we're getting a sense of what it means, actually. According to the FBI's own documents, Andy McCabe, Peter Strzok, and the rest decided that FBI agents should not warn Flynn that making a misleading statement to the FBI would be a crime. Now, the analysis suggests that somehow Flynn knew this and he must have been a moron for not bringing a lawyer. And that since he ran an intelligence agency, he must have known that any calls with Kislyak would be taped and transcribed. But that is, in fact, an argument for his innocence. Of course he knew that the FBI would be able to check everything he said against information they themselves had gathered. So knowing that, why would he lie? Maybe because he didn't think he was lying. As law professor Jonathan Turley put it yesterday, Flynn's downfall appears to have been engineered from day one. The feds chose their man and then picked the crime to pin on him.
And then Mueller decided to go back and charge him. It became a canned hunt. They put this guy in a cage and they shot him.
They put him in a cage and shot him. Huh. Well, just because there's still no evidence of Russian collusion doesn't mean we haven't become a lot more like Russia. Joe DeGenova is a former U.S. attorney for the District of Columbia, and he joins us now. I just want to state at the outset, Joe, he lied, say the news anchors. He lied! And he deserves whatever's coming to him. Assess that claim, if you would.
He did not lie, and in fact, the FBI knew it. Let's remember what this is about. This was a pretextual crime created by the FBI and by Sally Yates, the acting attorney general. Remember, after the election, Hillary Clinton needed a reason why she lost. Enter Russian collusion. Part of that was to find somebody in the administration to frame for talking to the Russians. They found General Flynn. But in fact, all of General Flynn's conversations with the Russian ambassador and everybody else were legal. So why did the FBI approach him? They knew what he said. They knew it was legal. The answer is they wanted to frame him, and they succeeded. And he did not tell them false information. Some of it may have been paused, it may have been nuanced. He did not lie. And indeed, the agents who actual 302s are available said he didn't lie. And it's interesting that Mueller did not turn over the original 302s to Judge Sullivan today. He turned over an interview of Agent Strzok, which was done months later by Mueller's people. The answer is Michael Flynn was framed in order to get at Donald Trump. Sally Yates, James Comey, Peter Strzok, Andy McCabe all planned it. What you are watching play out in an American courtroom is one of the most disgraceful events in American criminal justice, and everybody on Mueller's team should be ashamed of themselves, and none of them should ever be allowed to go back into the Department of Justice.
And any attorney who advised Michael Flynn to plead guilty to this, rather than going public with the frame-up that was happening to him, ought to be, I think, disbarred. Let me ask you, though, what do you make of the reaction to it? I think a lot of people watching, even this channel, pretty well-informed news consumers, are surprised to learn that the crime here, the only crime here, arises from that interview, the lawyerless interview in the White House. That Mike Flynn was never charged with colluding with anybody, including the Turks. You've heard all the speculation about how he's working for Erdogan. He was never charged with any of that, and yet he's totally been destroyed as a man. His family's been crushed. They're bankrupt. They had to sell their house on the basis of that one crime. Why doesn't anybody on any other network say, wait a second, could that be slightly disproportionate?
Well, Tucker, the people on the other networks and the people at the FBI at that time in the Department of Justice wanted one thing. They wanted to find a way to destroy Donald Trump because he wasn't supposed to be elected. But he beat them. And once they were beaten, they got angry. And then they got vindictive. And then they got vindictive by using the criminal justice system, weaponizing it. And John Brennan at the CIA and James Clapper followed through on their promised threat to figure out a way to get the people that they didn't want elected in order to make up for the fact that Hillary Clinton, had lost. This has become one of the greatest scandals in the history of our country, and the media is ignoring it. And it is truly important that what you are doing by focusing on these stories continue to be done until there's a new attorney general and there can be a grand jury to find out who was it that leaked the conversation of Michael Flynn with the Russian ambassador. That was a crime. The leak to David Ignatius of the Washington Post exposing General Flynn's conversation with the Russian ambassador was a crime. And the question tonight is, why isn't that crime being investigated?
Because everyone in Washington is deeply invested in our failed foreign policy, and anybody who suggests changing the foreign policy that they're deeply invested in and get rich from gets crushed. If the FBI lies to you in the course of an investigation and then charges you with lying, that doesn't ring any bells for you? You don't think, well, maybe that's a system that's inherently unfair? No? Or is that's totally cool as long as it's being done to someone you don't like?
Law enforcement agents infiltrate crime rings all the time, and they lie about their identity, and they lie about other things to gain access to people.
You should know, as an American citizen, the government can say anything to throw you in prison, but you should just know those are the rules. Okay, it's a predatory law enforcement establishment that is lying in wait to wreck your life. And like, if you don't know that, you're just an idiot. That's kind of what you're saying, I guess.
Think of the array of people who have not told the truth. Andrew McCabe was fired for lying to federal investigators. We don't know what's going to happen to him. So far, he hasn't faced criminal charges. But the Inspector General said he was lying. James Comey's statements about the FISA court and the role of the dossier are not true. James Clapper lied under oath to Congress. John Brennan lied under oath to Congress. Susan Rice lied when she said she did not request surveilled transcripts and have them unmasked. We know that Huma Abedin and Cheryl Mills lied when they said they did not have knowledge of the email server of their boss, Hillary Clinton. That's not even getting into the deception of the FISA court or the way that the investigations went on the email scandal or putting informants in a presidential campaign. So we've had a lot of wrongdoing by elites, and there's been no consequences. So the American people are not paranoid. They're saying, well, the Mueller investigation's going here, but they're going after misdemeanors or nothing, and here these felonies go completely unaddressed.